There we go. Sorry for all of you joining us on delay. Sean did bring us to order. Welcome to Position of Neutrality. You've noticed that we're festive here in Phoenix, Arizona. Shout out to all our Canadian friends and English friends and everybody around the globe. We do Christmas early because the tree is really hard for an old fat man to stack. So I have to. Anyway, we open all the Position of Neutralities with a prayer, and Wayne's in the house to do that tonight.
Oh, hello, everybody. Bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, we just invite you in. Speak to the hearts and to the minds of these your people, Lord. Empower us to just declare you boldly and to just speak testimony out into the world. Empower us to go out and make these amends. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Wayne. So as Wayne briefly introduced, if you haven't ever tuned into Position of Neutrality before, what we do is we take a look at the suggested instruction for a step or so a week directly out of this particular book, and we use this book in 12-step recovery. Why? Now, the process described by the authors of this book has been proven to work for addicts of the hopeless variety, addicts to alcohol and other substances. In fact, lots of other worldly conditions. And so what we do is not try and do anything particularly new. I simply show you how I find my experience in it and encourage you to have your experience with it. And if we both do our job, we share a spiritual experience with every one of these encounters. The other thing that I should point out to you is tonight we're in steps 8 and 9, and a lot of people fear that, the idea of admitting we're wrong, the idea of confronting our own prejudices, the idea of restitution in any form. But I encourage you to embrace the revelations that come to you tonight, because step 8 and 9 are really the fitness steps. If I'm truly serious about my third step decision, I'm going to need to be stronger in the spirit than I have been in the past. And so how do I empower the spirit? Well, I do it by subordinating the ego and submitting every thought to the spirit within me so that I can be refined and renewed. Another book talks about do not be conformed to the world, rather be transformed through the renewal of your mind. Without this ability to go out and admit the harms done, admit the resentments and grievances that I'm holding on to, I won't be able to go out and do some of the more difficult tasks that a servant has to do in the world in order to be effective. If that makes sense. Yeah. So I encourage you to embrace the fitness experience the same way you would embrace something you've got in your bodybuilding routine that you don't particularly like, leg day, for instance. But you're going to look silly if you've got a big upper body and no leg. So we're going to try and just embrace every experience as what it is. It's a fitness exercise, right? So we're on the page 76, and the authors tell us now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. The authors of this book spent a lot of time studying the book of James. Those of you that are in recovery, regardless of your denomination or belief system, I encourage you to read the book of James. You'll find much of AA there. James talks about guarding that erring member of the tongue. He talks about setting a whole forest afire with a single spark. So all the good we can do can be set ablaze with a single spark, because the power of life and death is in the tongue. So this is what we're seeking to grow into. If that makes sense. Yes? And faith without works is dead. He didn't say it's hard to see. He says it's dead. Because faith, once within us and empowered, inevitably produces works. The same way an apple tree, properly watered and nourished, is going to produce apples. All right, so then it says that let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. Any of you have such a list?
Yep.
Where did you get it?
out of my 4-step list.
Sean says he got it when he took inventory. The authors say we made it when we took inventory. Why do I call that to your attention?
It's not a new thought.
The idea, guys, is we're trying to find our experience in the book, right to the last detail. They wrote down precisely how they were recovered. So as you people that are showing others, if you'll call to their attention, what's your experience? What's your experience? Because those of us who want what they describe, if you want what we have, and you're willing to go to any length to get it, and what they had was this profound spiritual awakening that revolutionized their whole attitude toward life, their fellows, in God's universe. Power. Good job. Okay. All right. So it said we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Those of you who have done it, did you find it drastic?
Yes.
Those of you contemplating it, are you afraid of it because it seems drastic?
Yes.
So you're joining a fellowship of people who came here with a past that seems drastic to each and every one of us. We doubt we would have made much progress had we not taken action. And that's why we encourage you to move forward. Yes?
Yes.
All right. So now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. I call to your attention, the author's experience is that willingness is divine power. There's no shame in lacking willingness, but you will have to get disciplined about asking for it when you recognize that you're lacking it. Because it's power of righteousness, power of things that we have lacked, obviously, or we wouldn't have found ourselves in this situation. Yes?
Yeah.
All right, so remember it was agreed at the beginning that we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. They put that sentence in italics. Why would you think they would recall us back to that point and do it in italics?
Because it's important.
And Sean states the obvious every week. He's well known around the world for stating the obvious. But why is it important?
It's scary. So we have to be willing.
And to whom did I make the agreement, right? I've been insincere all my life. I could look you right in the eye and promise you something I had no intention to deliver and not give it another thought. That's how I lived. That's who I was. That's what I was like. I found I can't do that anymore once I made a commitment to this power found within me. I may be able to mislead you, but I won't be able to do it very well, and it's easier for me just to tell you what's up right up front. And that all happened for me, through me, not by anything I did. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So then it says probably there are some misgivings. So what are they telling us?
No shit.
So if you're looking at the step 8 and 9, made a list of all the people we have hurt, became willing to make amends to them all, emphasize all. So obviously there's some misgivings. There's some people I don't want to see. There's some people I'm embarrassed to see. There's some things I don't want to admit about myself. Yes?
Yeah.
As we look over our list of business acquaintances and friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. So how many of you got here without a defined spiritual belief? Maybe a real defined one, but it was anti-religious experiences. And okay, so we want to caution you, when we're talking about a spiritual experience, we're talking about an experience, not a theology. We're talking about power, peace, happiness, sense of direction flowing from within us. We're talking about wanting to be conscious of it on an ongoing basis. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So then it says we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be reassured, to some people we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. We might prejudice them. Have you ever been approached by somebody who seemed to be making excuses for a lot of bad behavior because of their quest for a relationship with God or
Power.
One of the things that we get skeptical about is our experiences with religious people. True?
Yeah, right.
And so what they're saying is, don't lead with that, because people's experience of that's going to take them in the wrong direction. Lead with honesty. Lead with authenticity. That's how God would have you be.
Power.
So at the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order, but this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. So one of the things we do, if you haven't tuned into us before, is when I say God, they say power, so that people understand we're talking about power greater than ourselves that we find within ourselves, and then by getting the things out of our way that block our consciousness, our awareness of being aware of that power in and on our lives, where we gain access to this power, peace, happiness, sense of direction. And we want to improve that experience because I need direction. I need power, peace. I got to quit looking for my happiness out there. One of the things I learned about looking for happiness out in the world is it's like the horse chasing the carrot on the stick. It's always just a little bit ahead of me. So this is the fitness step, the purpose step, and this is why we want to embrace it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Most of us lived a life that we felt lacked purpose. We found power and purpose within us, but now we've got to walk it out. Okay, so it's seldom wise to approach an individual who's still smart from our injustice to him and announce that we've gone religious. In the prize ring, this would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious wars? When they put a question in this book, they call it a text for a reason. They want to call your attention inward, introspective. Is that your thought, right? Eyesight without insight's spiritual blindness. I've been running around spiritually blind for way too long. I need to know if I'm thinking anything like that sentence, what are my thoughts about that sentence? And am I going to let that stand in the way of my new freedom? Because you're really not answering to the world anymore. You're just answering to the creator of all of it within you. Okay, so we may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. So again, if I robbed you, my first approach to you probably shouldn't have been, I've been out there looking for God. Sure sorry about your jewelry. Right? Because now they're not going to be able to hear me. Because all they want to know is where's my jewelry or my money, right?
Yeah.
So, but our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. So lead with your willingness to set right the wrong. To their specification, not yours. One of the mistakes many of us new in recovery make is we go out and tell them what we're willing to do to make it right. It's not what it says. We make an approach and let them tell us what would make it right. So he's going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in our talk of spiritual discovery. So I put the question back to you, wouldn't you be? I really don't care about your spiritual journey when I'm this angry at you, this hurt, this betrayed. Yes?
Right.
All right, so we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God.
Power.
When it'll serve any good purpose, we're willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. So you might want to ask yourself, it's a good reflection point, what would tact and common sense look like in any situation that I'm trying to encounter with people I've had a past with? And how would you like to be approached if the roles were reversed? That kind of thing. Make sense? These are moments of contemplation and revelation, and you'll grow in it if you'll take the time to take it seriously. And it's just your life here that you're working toward, right?
Yeah.
All right, so the question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. So how many of you don't like the word hate? In almost every room, people don't like the word hate. It means strongly dislike. So what we need to do is get past the power of the word and realize there's a lot of people that I think have done me a lot of harm, and I'll say, well, I can forgive, but I won't forget. I go, well, then you didn't forgive. Right? Because you're not going to get the promise, I don't regret the past and I wish you shut the door on it, if I don't get past the idea that I of myself have the power in me to do that healing I need for that forgiveness. Forgiveness is a divine act. For all my counselor friends that like to say you got to forgive yourself, no, you don't. You got to believe in the one he sent. It may be that he has done us more harm than we have done him, and though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we're still not too keen about admitting our faults. So maybe I've encountered this person, the first one that showed me positive attention in a long time, and I sure don't want him to know the kind of man I've been. But I'm not going to be able to use that to lift up another man who feels like he's not worthy until I've humbled myself enough to share it with someone who loves me enough to hear it and carry it and dispose of it with me.
Yeah.
So nevertheless, with the person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It's harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. I've heard this taught that you go to the hardest one first. That's not what they said. In fact, they laid the book out, suggested how you would probably do it, because it's the way they all did it. To the wife, to the family, to the employer, get a circle of support around you. There'll be time to get to them. Don't dally, and you will find you get more benefit from the ones you hated than the ones you loved, because hate is a huge burden to carry. But you're not ready to carry it yet. So get into fitness. Start where you can. Any of you ever go to the gym and see all those people pushing big weights and injure yourself on the first day because you, yeah, don't be that guy. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit. Guys, do not miss this. You people working with people. I cannot go to a human being that I have an animosity toward in a helpful and forgiving spirit without power from my Creator. When I am gonna go to someone in a helpful and forgiving spirit, I'm gonna have to pray. I'm gonna have to pray through prayer. It's a fact. And then it says, confessing our former ill feeling and expressing our regret. Then they got a bunch of instruction, and the reason I said the first is if I don't go to them centered in the spirit, then when they start saying things I'm not ready for, I'm liable to retaliate, and I'll find myself making amends for the amends I tried to make. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. And you see, I'm only telling you the mistakes they made, and they recorded their mistakes in the book. So you are going to make these mistakes, and then you're going to, oh yeah, prayer. Right? Okay. Simply, we tell them we'll never get over drinking until we've done our utmost to straighten out the past. Caution there. If you don't believe it, they'll know. So if you don't believe this phase of your development is important to you to get over whatever addictive disorder you're trying to come back from, then you might as well not say it. Because there are no secrets in the realm of the spirit, and truth comes with a feel. People know that are in tune. Even people that aren't in tune, when I'm there different in the spirit, they know. I had a pastor come to me one time during one of these sessions. And he came up to me and he says, I'm struggling with meth addiction. I always wonder why pastors and doctors have got meth addiction. So they're like nothing worse, no worse chemical, but that's what they got. And anyway, he comes up to me and he goes, it's very disturbing to me. You're teaching recovery, but it's coming to me with a signature. And I said, well, then you're well enough trained to know who's teaching you. It ain't me. You should pay attention, brother. Okay, so we're there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so. Never trying to tell him what he should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. This is the fitness step, folks. The mistake a lot of people make is they like to go out and start telling people what to do and pretend they're sponsored. Never telling them what they should do. Their faults are not discussed. If I'm helping you with your inventory, I'm doing it wrong. That is for you and your Creator. I'm just showing you that you're redeemed, you're loved, and you're favored just as you are, and there's growth possible for you. Yes?
Yes.
Some of you are feeling that.
Yeah.
So then it says, if our manner is calm, frank, and open, we'll be gratified with the result. So there's what that's the promise we're after. All of us want to be gratified. So if I'm centered in the spirit, no matter how difficult a thing I'm walking through, no matter how much fear I'm in, my manner is going to be calm. They will not know my fear because it is the desperation driving me to fitness that's presenting them, which means I'm clefted in Him. So then it goes on to say that in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. So how many of you preparing for an approach of any kind went through all the scenarios and how it could go and talked yourself right out of it? How many of you have gone and had a completely different experience than you thought you might have when you finally made approaches. Almost everyone. So in 9 cases out of 10, I don't have any idea how they're going to receive it, and it's not really me delivering it anyway. If I'm centered in the Spirit, it's going to be exactly the message that needs to be heard, right? And anyone in this room gamblers or ever have been? What bet wouldn't we take at 90%? Even if the 10% happens, I'm centered in the Spirit for whatever it is. And I say that for the people that have to go do something that might get them in trouble with the law. I've taken people through their steps. I know Sean has too. And what they disclosed to me in the process is that they still had a crime out there. And I said, well, do you want to look over your shoulder the rest of your life, or do you want to have a new freedom and a new happiness? And they went and did their self-surrender, and I got a whole lot more discipline in my practices too. Because what they did was harder than what I was being asked to do. So anyway, sometimes the man we're calling upon admits his own faults, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour, and then a promise from the authors. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. They use the word rarely a couple times in this book, and there's been debates over the years what rarely means. I would say for those of you that are struggling with word meanings, rarely means doesn't happen very often. What I like people to understand is because we're really not Pollyannish in recovery. I hear people all the time, oh, God won't take you to something you can't go through. That's not true. He won't take you to something he can't go through. And he's not a spectator God. He goes with us. So what I need you to understand is that I most likely will go through things I can't do. But I've never encountered anything he can't do. And we want you to know that because you're entitled to the truth. Not my truth, not your truth, the truth. Okay, so it says our former enemies sometimes praise what we're doing and wish us well, and occasionally they'll offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone does throw us out of his office. We've made our demonstration, done our part, it's water over the dam. Why did they tell us that?
Because it happens once in a while.
Exactly. It's an example of what I just said to you. The 10% can happen.
Right.
But if you're centered, if you're growing, you're going to get through it. You're going to get healing from it. You're going to get revelation from it. And you're going to be a better witness because of it. So then it says, most alcoholics owe money.
Yeah. No, really?
I've met one alcoholic in all the years I've done this, and I've done it many times a week for many, many years. And he claimed profusely that he got to AA not owing money, and I assume that if that is true, he just wasn't a serious enough drinker. He wasn't ready. We all get here owing money, and if we don't get here owing money, we start owing money the first time we get feeling froggy and we get a paycheck that we haven't had in a while. Anyway, we do not dodge our creditors. Why'd they know that? Because we're not about that life anymore. But I have been. I've been the guy that couldn't answer the phone, couldn't answer the door, saw a strange car in the parking lot. Whose house am I in anyway? Telling them what we're trying to do, we make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. A lot of times we think we were very clever in our addiction. Not everyone ran the wheels off the train, but you know, if you thought you were pulling it off, you might not have. Anyway, it says, nor are we afraid of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory that it may cause financial harm. Be careful with that one. My drinking history, my addiction history, in and of itself is not going to cause me financial harm. And if it will benefit you, I owe you that explanation. But if you don't need that explanation because I've done you no harm, it may well cause me financial harm, and it's not going to benefit you at all. So that would just be foolish pride or attention seeking or self-degradation. It's not where we want to go. Does that make sense? Okay, so approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arranging the best deal we can, we let these people know we're sorry. Now, they use intentional words. We let these people know, which isn't the same thing as hearing from me, because they heard lots of things from me.
Right.
So they're going to hear something very different from me, and they're going to see something very different from me. Hopefully, I've been properly prepped for that through prayer and meditation, and hopefully someone who's done it before, right? I need to show up with a plan and a payment and a plan for continued payment or whatever it is, as well as an admission of what I had done and making no excuse for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we're liable to drink if we're afraid to face them. Why'd they know that?
That's a great word.
People that live in fear don't live there long.
No.
And people like us that are sensitive to the Spirit anyway, we don't live in fear well at all. You either meditate or you medicate. So perhaps we've committed a criminal offense, which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. Perhaps. And they're talking about the ones that you may or may not have been adjudicated for, as well as if you're still living in the ones you were adjudicated for. Because the other thing we want to set you free from, those things that you've been adjudicated for, but now you're taking on society's label as an inmate or an offender, you're not that. You're a member of society. You're a human being. You're a new creation. And that identity is a false identity. Your identity here in the manner of living is you're a child of the living God.
Amen.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We've already admitted this in confidence to another person, but we're sure we would be in prison or lose our job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Many of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we're divorced and have remarried, but haven't kept up the alimony to number one. She's indignant about it and has a warrant out for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. They lay a bunch of stuff out. They're very brief in their descriptions. And you guys that are working with younger men and women, remember how prone we are when we're younger to say, well, that hasn't happened to me. Well, that's not me. So just because your number didn't come up in that lottery, what we're trying to get you to see is find some commonality in your human condition, right? And so they want us to just set out a general table, because back then you usually didn't get to these people till you were tore up from the floor up. So although these reparations take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding. So these guys know there's all kinds of ways we meet people, all kinds of levels of their, how far the fall was. And it doesn't really matter if the traumatic event for the woman at the meeting was that she burned the turkey and embarrassed her parents. I've heard that. I mean, it seems trivial to me, who went way past embarrass the parents.
Ouch.
I was trying not to get too specific. But what I want you to understand is whatever brings you to your knees, there's a healer there. And whatever human condition has brought you into this fold, you couldn't be here and stay here if you did not belong here. Right? So find a way to belong instead of a way to be excluded would be my recommendation. Reminding ourselves that we've decided to go to any lengths to find a spiritual experience, we ask that we be given strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. The goal of 12-step recovery is not sobriety, but spiritual awakening. We need to remind people of that. Sobriety is a byproduct. It's fruit. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. Again, you might be one of the 10%ers. You might be going back to do another bid to clean it up. You might be losing that relationship you desperately think you can't live without. You may be for the good of the family, be separated from your children for a while, and all are things that you don't want to hear, but really not about you. That's the only thing I would understand, would hope you would understand, as much as it feels like it's about you personally. This whole journey, this whole manner of living is losing my self-identity and picking up his. So usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we're not to be the hasty and foolish martyr who would needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried because of resentment and drinking. He had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life. So he had come in contact with the AAs, and he was trying to grow into a servant. If you'll read the book of James, I take you back there for a minute. Book of James very succinctly talks about a new manner of living that displays the work so it's attractive to others. And that's what the whole AA thing, almost one of the names they floated was the James Club. So you just should understand that that's fundamental to your AA teaching, even if you claim another faith, to understand the principles they're talking about. All right, so he had commenced our way of life, had secured a position, and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics if he had walked up to the judge and said, "Here I am." It does sound like impressive heroics, doesn't it? But now, what about spiritual development and putting down the manifestations of self would benefit from impressive heroics? It would be counterindicated, wouldn't it? So what we need to understand is our thinking needs to be checked. Wayne tells the story of a friend of his when he was working and he was still struggling, and he had a mishap in the detox, stumbled on a syringe full of heroin. And anyway, when someone OD'd, he was the manager in charge, and it was obvious that he was high, trying to manage the OD. And the only reason I tell you all of that is Wayne's experience of it is so profound when I hear him tell it from the podium. He said his friend said nothing to him other than that he was terminated, but he said this profound thing, and I will get it wrong, but I can no longer trust your thinking.
Right.
He wasn't disparaging of him. And so what we're telling you, if you're new, is we don't trust your thinking. That doesn't mean we don't find you precious. That we don't, right? We want to help you, because this isn't about never thinking again. That's why there's signs on every wall and in any hall that's been around a while. Think, but wake up first.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So we thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. So the impressive heroics would have done harm, not good. We suggested he write his first wife admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. He did, and he also sent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try and do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. And then it says, of course, she did not. The whole situation has long since been adjusted. I caution you to look at that whole description. It's what I just laid out. Go there with a payment and a plan and whatever, and see how it falls. And understand that when they say, of course she did not, you have no way of knowing that you're not a 10%er when you go to do that. That's a demonstration of faith. Again, faith without works. Their healing that they need, they think that they're crazy because of my crazy's worn off on them. Many of you ever lie to people so often they were thinking they were crazy themselves? How many of you have worked with another addict and they did it to you? Because we are energy thieves. We'll take it right back from them. We know there's no earthly explanation for what happened. You did this. But you say you didn't, so okay. Anyway, the reality is they are going to get infused in them some capacity to forgive, which will untether them for the faithless life I've lived. And it's important that we give them that freedom if we can. So before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. So that's pretty simple instruction. And then it says, if we have obtained permission and have consulted with others, ask God to help. before and the drastic step is indicated. Notice how they gave us an experience of beginning a prayer and meditation life on the fly. All of this, check the box, check the box. I've asked for help. Yep, the drastic step is indicated. I've got confirmation. Pay attention to that, and pay attention in the ones you're working with when they're getting the confirmation, because you're going to have to assure them that that was a confirmation they received. And when they get one, you'll know. Even on the phone, you'll know. Because the Spirit is not limited by time or space. All right, so the drastic step is indicated. We must not shrink. This brings to mind the story of one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. So, all they're saying is this cat's out drinking and runs into somebody who gave him some money for a purpose. And because he was drinking, it never made it to the purpose. Most of us can relate to that sort of thing happening. And instead of saying, listen, you gave it to me when I was drinking, I spent it. He said, nah, dude's lying. He never gave me nothing. Most of us have done that sort of thing, right? So it says, in fact, his rival was ruined. He felt he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? So, question mark. And what is the guiding principle? None without their permission. So he's going to know, he's going to have the revelation. I need to go to them and tell them this is what I need to do. I'll give you a little clue. I tell people this over the years. I've told this story enough times. I just want you to understand what this guy, in the early fellowship days, not all of them went to the AA group. Some of them were church members and what have you. So they went back to their church groups as they grew. And this guy was more of that type. He was an Oxford group member. So it was important to him to get back to his church family, not his AA family as we typically know it today. And so he couldn't even go to his own church because the guy had given him money for the church fund, which he spent drinking, and then he lied about his friend giving it to him. So he defrauded not only the church and everyone in it, but did harm or false witness against. And those principles meant something to him. Okay? So then he says, how could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? Now you know the importance of really getting prepared in the Spirit. I don't even know how many people I defrauded. Because that money for the church fund was probably supposed to go out and help some other ministry. I defrauded, beyond measure, right? I don't have any idea. And I'm talking to people that have been part of a church family and understand these are serious things. There's biblical stories of what happens when you do that to the Holy Spirit. Anyway, after consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. So you understand his language now that we've set the stage, right? He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again and all would be lost anyhow. I always like to call my attention to new ones I'm working with. The moment that you see that it must be placed in God's hands is a sensory experience. I'm afraid of this, but I can't go further until I do this. Yep. And then after the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. So his manner was calm. Any of you ever had a church family that you had to get up and make a difficult explanation to? Or an AA family? Where's my kindred spirits that stole the 7 tradition money? We got an obligation to go back to the group and tell them what we did. Yep. It's a difficult conversation. Anyway, it said he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he's one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. They're showing you a redemption in real time. The thief of the church fund has been liberated, restored, taken from the scrap heap, and now he's one of the most trusted citizens of the town, all through the power of God. So the chances are that we have domestic troubles. I look around every recovery room and I know that most of us have had domestic troubles of some sort. Perhaps we're mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if in this respect alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people, but drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? Another question mark. So there's a reason there's a chapter to the wives. What's it like to have someone like me coming home or not coming home day in, day out for years? Telling lies and then making them tell lies because they need the same paycheck I'm about to lose. Anyway, the husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor.
Christie's Cabaret.
Sean's been talking about that strip joint. We really need shirts. But I'm not sending any of our people to Christie's. Perhaps he's having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. They put that in quotations, and most of us have met the one who understands. And what we want to consider is it really another worldly experience I need to enter into inauthentically and dishonestly? And do I really want to have that responsibility on me as I try and grow? And am I really trying to grow? I mean, just no shame in the game. Just what are you trying to do? I always like to tell people at this point, if they're playing too hard and they're not remorseful, understand remorse comes back. Just because you're blocking consciousness of it right now, it comes back, it revisits. So just be careful. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? Another question mark. So it's not their understanding that I'm really seeking anyway. What I'm really trying to do is block my consciousness of my intolerable situation instead of grow spiritually. Yes?
Yeah.
I mean, people, we hear it all the time. I'm lonely in recovery. Well, you're never alone. So why don't you improve consciousness of the one that's been with you through it all? Because that's where your understanding is going to come from as well. A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he's married to a loyal and courageous girl who's literally gone through hell for him. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. Those are strong words. Who's the we? The first 100. Their experience, the first several thousand. If you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you're ready. And so we need to start getting ready. Yes?
Yeah.
So then it says, if we're sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Another question. Well, and everyone has an opinion there, but we should understand how sure are we? We thought we were pretty clever with a lot of things. How do you know that everything you did wasn't known and that she'd just been living in that? He, she, or they're doing their own jam and you're going to have that little surprise coming too. Not always, we think. If she knows in a general way that we've been wild, should we tell her in detail? Another question. Now that one I usually get more definite, mainly because of personal experience of demanding detail, getting detail, and finding detail is very difficult to get out of the memory bank.
Yeah. Can't unsee that.
No, and it lingers. So undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She'll want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We're sorry for what we've done, and God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Then they go into a session that I think all of us should consider, though there may be justifiable exceptions. I was a man of justifiable exceptions. And what I learned from justifiable exceptions is that the minute I gave the details, it deflected the responsibility and accountability that I sought to demonstrate to another who was uninvolved. They were duped by my dishonesty, same as the other person. So now I wrecked a relationship potentially, and I just did harm and didn't take any accountability. So you remember those half measures of eldest nothing? This is one of those. So then it goes on to say, though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we've often found this the best course to take. How'd they find it was the best course? They did what I did. They did more harm in their deluded state of trying to amend harm, and then they had to go make amends for the amends they tried to make.
That's right.
So our design for living is not a one-way street. It's as good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. Sean, I'm waiting for a quote.
Don't tell her that.
Yes.
That's Sean speaking.
It's never good to quote the big book to other people,
No.
because this book is not for you. I mean, if it's for you, by all means, adapt to the manner of living it suggests. But what this book does for me is it promises me if I follow these principles, it won't matter to me what you do or say. And I need that kind of freedom. And the one thing I can't do, again, faith without works is dead. I should be demonstrating to you enough spiritual principles to take whatever assault you have on me and turn the other cheek. And if I'm not, I've got work to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so it's better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. Back to the outcome. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. You're still going to have to consult the Spirit. There are some things that you're just absolutely caught in, and it's going to be better for both involved that you just, yep, that's what's up. You're probably going to see it on the news anyway. Or in court, or wherever our shit ends up. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we're dealing with that most terrible emotion, human emotion, jealousy. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk face-to-face combat. Another demonstration where they're trying to say faith without works is dead. Just be a decent guy. Just be a better man and woman than you were yesterday, and it'll be all right. All right, so if we have no such complication, there's plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. So how many of you have heard that? You hear it a lot in our fellowships, and it's complete nonsense. Because I was sober lots of times before I wasn't. So if that's the only thing I need to do, and I've admitted sincerely, fully conceded to my innermost self that I'm powerless to do it, then the one thing I must do, I can't do. So it's just not even honest, right? All right, so, but he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he's so shockingly treated, passing all understanding as the patients mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have had no homes today, would perhaps be dead. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. I encourage you to spend time with the people you're helping read this book, to look at the picture they're painting. Look at the destruction our lives rolling through their lives has wrought. And try and get in a place where we're at least empathetic with what we've shared with them. Yes? Because everyone that lives with us, even for a little bit of time, is at least as sick as us. Because you can't live with the likes of me when I'm in it and not be really sick. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. Then they give you an inoffensive way to talk to people about it. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. It may be enough for some. It's never was enough for me. So I can't speak to those for whom just not doing something is enough. It takes no power to not do. If you have the power to not do something, then don't do it. A lot of people think, oh, yeah, I just made a decision. Yeah, I made that fucking decision 100,000 times. So he's like a farmer who came out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" They do that to call our attention how silly it is. You know, the train wreck that many of us have been is not going to be just swept away by, well, at least I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a long period of reconstruction ahead, and we must take the lead. So we're rebuilding. Growing in the Spirit, we're rebuilding. Those sweet relationships that are dead, any of you that have been in recovery any length of time, one of the things we understand is that this power we encounter has the power to resurrect dead. And I have watched dead relationships come back to life and come back into my life. Yeah? Some of you feeling that? So a remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it. So hopefully we're seeing the past differently. Yes? Being very careful not to criticize them. One of the things you want to do, families like you in your dynamic. So be careful when you go back to the family too soon. Don't dive back into your old dynamic. When we're in the treatment game, we spend a lot of time prepping people whether to go home and when to go home and how that should be accomplished, because everyone there's got a sickness and they like you and yours.
Right.
Okay, so their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. So that's a prayer we don't talk about nearly enough. Every morning in your meditation, ask to be shown the way. And if you're in the way, when you discover patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, evidence of that, you'll be manifesting it. You'll see it. You'll see it around you. You'll see it on you. You'll see it through you. More importantly, others will see it, and they'll be drawn to you. All right, so the spiritual life is not a theory. All this stuff we talk about deep spiritual revelation and experience. We want you to understand the reason this meeting's been done for so many years exactly like this is I came into a fellowship where no one thought anyone did the steps anymore. And there were a lot of meetings where no one knew what the steps were, and there were 16 different fellowships telling you we got steps and they got steps and we all got freaking steps. What we have is a manner of living that is dedicated. Since I already gave my life an addiction, if I'm going to get a new one, it needs to really be new. And I'm going to live it in service to the power that lifted me out of that scrap. And so it's really 5 basic principles. The original members that wrote this book, none of them did 12 steps. So don't believe in any of these people teaching perfect nothing. It was all, this is just their testimony about what happened when they finally got broken enough to follow 5 basic principles. All right, so we have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. So if they said it, they must have done it, right? It's not effective, right? And then it says they will change in time. Claim that promise. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. This is self-accountability. If there's something you need to make right, then talk to somebody and go make it right. If it can't be made right, then talk to the Spirit and move on. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter, and there may be valid reasons for postponement in some cases. Some of us have criminal charges. We're not allowed to talk to the victim. So there's lots of reasons why you can't. right? And that's okay. What I have learned is that the Creator will get us in a place where we can deliver that which we need to deliver to get the healing we need. But we don't delay if it can be avoided. He should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. No one's asking you to humiliate yourself any further. We're asking you to be authentic in your approach and hold your head up as you go through the process. Yes?
Yes.
As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. So take that encouragement, and especially if you're new and your beliefs are not quite formed, just take our word for it. That's who you are. That's whose you are. He can do anything but fail. Stay in the walk. Yes? Then they got some promises. If we're painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we're halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We'll not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We'll lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We'll intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. One of the stories that was profound to me, when I finally had that sudden revelation, because they're talking about revelations in your walk. I ended up in a detox, and this cat came in. He was younger than me, but he was going through this book, and he was sharing the Spirit, and I knew that if I could get this guy to help me, that I would be better. And he took me through the steps and whatever. Anyway, several months later, maybe even a year later, ran into him again. We didn't stay in real close contact after that, really, but ran into him again. And I said, "Hey, man, did you ever go back to that detox you met me in?" And he goes, "You haven't figured it out yet?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "Dude, I've never been back. I've never seen the guy who asked me to go again. God sent me there for you, Joe." And since that time, I don't know how many people I've been allowed to encourage, but I'm sure it's in the hundreds of thousands. And so I know what he said is true, because that's how we live out our purpose, is to hear his voice and say, "Yeah, here I am, Lord, send me." And then the rest of it's all divine appointment. Are these extravagant promises?
Yes.
They say that we think not, but they're telling you that as a bunch of old scammers. Look, I know this sounds like a lot of hooey, but the evidence is that they're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. And that's where we stop. Thank you very much.